Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at British history as some dry timeline of events. Nope. We're going to treat the British identity like a massive, ongoing building project that's been under construction for the last 2,000 years. Think of each era as a brand new architectural layer added to a seriously deep foundation.
Okay, let's dive right into this. How exactly did a relatively small island, sitting out there on the damp western edge of Europe, manage to project its influence across the entire globe? I mean, how did it essentially help build the modern world? It's a truly fascinating blueprint to examine. And to really get it, we've got to start from the ground up.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Invasions and Early Foundations.
Because, every great structure needs a solid base, right? And Britain's foundation was literally laid down by rapid waves of external conquerors. First up, in 43 AD, the Romans arrive. They dropped the very first bricks of infrastructure. We're talking paved roads and the bustling settlement of Londinium. But when the Roman Empire inevitably collapses, the island is left totally vulnerable. So by the 5th century, in sweep the Anglo-Saxons. They push the native Britons to the fringes, out towards places like Wales and Cornwall, and at the same time, they lay the crucial groundwork for the English language. Then, fast forward to the 8th century, and here come the Viking raiders. They tear through until they're ultimately halted by Alfred the Great, who manages to forge the very first unified sense of England, which brings us right up to the massive shakeup of 1066, the Norman conquest.
And wow, the 1066 Battle of Hastings was an absolute game-changer. William the Conqueror didn't just win a battlefield victory here, he completely reframed the culture and the land ownership of the entire island. Literally overnight, we transitioned from traditional Anglo-Saxon rule straight into a rigid Norman-French feudal system. It was a complete and total architectural overhaul of society.
Moving on to Section 2, the Birth of Rights.
So that rigid feudal system we just talked about, it eventually hits a major breaking point. Let's jump forward to 1215, right in the thick of the Middle Ages. For centuries, kings had been ruling with absolute, unquestioned authority. But King John pushes his barons just a little too far. In this incredibly dramatic showdown, these frustrated nobles essentially corner the king and force him to sign a completely revolutionary document.
So the crucial point here is the Magna Carta, and the big revolutionary idea it established was simply this: the king is not above the law. Now, I know that sounds like basic common sense to us today, but back then, it was a political earthquake. No way around it. This single concept laid the very first stepping stone toward modern democracy, and of course, the eventual creation of Parliament.
Which brings us to Section 3, Crown, Conflict, and Constitution.
It is just wild to think that one monarch's personal love life could completely restructure an entire nation. But that's exactly what happened with Henry VIII. Driven by his sheer determination to marry Anne Boleyn and willing to go to extreme lengths to get a divorce, he literally breaks Britain away from the Roman Catholic Church. He establishes himself as the supreme head of the newly minted Church of England, entirely shifting the island's religious and political power dynamics in one swift, historic move.
But it's actually his daughter, Elizabeth I, who really levels up the nation. During her golden age, Britain transforms into a massive cultural and naval powerhouse. You've got the stunning defeat of the Spanish Armada, which secures their borders against seemingly overwhelming odds. You've got William Shakespeare completely revolutionizing literature, embedding his absolute genius into the English identity forever, and bold explorers like Francis Drake begin sailing the globe, expanding Britain's view way, way beyond its own shores.
But as history shows us, that golden era stability couldn't last forever. The stubborn grip of an absolute monarchy eventually led to a spectacularly bloody civil war, the unprecedented execution of King Charles I, and a decade-long republic under Oliver Cromwell. But out of all that chaos, a stabilized structure finally emerged, the constitutional monarchy. Finalized by the Bill of Rights in 1699, it laid down the law that no monarch could rule without Parliament's consent. It was a masterful compromise, and, importantly, it's the exact same system they still use today.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Industry and Empire.
During this era, Britain becomes the undeniable birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. Imagine the landscape completely transforming with massive technological booms, the deafening roar of newly invented steam engines, and the rapid rise of factories. Britain effectively engineered itself into the workshop of the world, mass-producing goods at a scale that humanity had literally never seen before. Now, what's really interesting here is this fraction, 1/4. Fueled by all that new industrial might, under Queen Victoria, the British Empire expanded at such an astonishing rate that it eventually covered nearly a quarter of the entire globe. Just think about that. From India to Africa to the Americas, British influence was quite literally everywhere.
And that unprecedented global reach gave birth to a very famous phrase, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." And because it spanned across so many time zones, it was literally true. Always daylight somewhere in British territory. Now, looking impartially at the historical sources, we have to note the immense complexity of this era. While it brought vast wealth and rapid technological progress back to the island, it also left a highly complex, often very painful legacy of colonization and struggle across the globe. It's a foundational pillar of modern history that absolutely continues to shape international relations today.
Now we enter the 20th century with Section 5, Wars and Modern Britain. During the incredibly dark days of the World Wars, Britain's resilience was tested to the absolute limit. Take 1940, for example. Led by Winston Churchill, the country stood largely alone for a time against some truly formidable odds. They became absolutely central to resisting the Nazi invasion and fighting back against tyranny. It remains this defining, monumental moment of national unity and fierce endurance.
Let's move forward and see how this builds into the modern era, because the aftermath of those global conflicts remodeled Britain forever. In 1948, we see the creation of the National Health Service, establishing a core societal pillar of healthcare for all. We also see rapid decolonization, as the former empire transitions into the modern Commonwealth of Nations. And then, a massive cultural explosion in the 1960s. We're talking the British invasion of music with legendary bands like the Beatles, and bold new fashion trends that instantly turned London into a buzzing global cultural hub.
Which brings us to the structure as it proudly stands today. Modern Britain is a highly diverse, beautifully multicultural nation. And right now, it's constantly navigating its new place and identity in a post-Brexit world. Yet, as our sources highlight, it perfectly blends those deep-rooted ancient traditions, like the mystical stones of Stonehenge, with the cutting-edge, fast-paced tech hubs of modern London. It really is an identity defined by constant, ongoing evolution.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative question to ponder. What will the next evolution of the British identity look like? How is this 2,000-year-old structure going to adapt to the completely unforeseen challenges of the future? The historical foundation is undeniably deep, but as we've seen, this building project is never truly finished. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.